Good morning, Tobago.
All right, viewers, welcome back to Good Morning Tobago, and I'm here chatting with former minority leader, Mr. Ashworth Jack. Now, Mr. Jack, the entire nation would have heard the Prime Minister's announcement to resign from office before the end of his legal tenure. And the announcement, everyone started questioning, well, who's going to be the next Prime Minister? What's going to happen in terms of leadership where the People's National Movement Party is concerned? And we are hearing in this space that some people are branding the Prime Minister's intention to resign as unconstitutional. So I want to get your opinion. Do you think it's unconstitutional where the laws of Trinidad and Tobago are concerned, or is it unconstitutional where the party's constitution is concerned?
No, and the issue of the Prime Minister resigning cannot be unconstitutional. The Prime Minister have individual rights like anybody else in the country. What is ticklish about it is that the Prime Minister have signaled his intention to resign as Prime Minister, but not as political leader of the party. And let me explain why that is ticklish. The Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago, as it relates, I think it's Section 62, as it relates to the appointment of a Prime Minister, is a little ticklish, in that it says that the leader of the political party, in the opinion of the president, the leader of the political organization that commands the majority of support shall be named Prime Minister.
Correct.
In this case, because he remains as political leader, he is the person who, don't care how you turn it, cut it, dice it, the president legally have to appoint as Prime Minister, but he's resigning and said, look, I don't want to be. So I think that when you saw, or when you're seeing now rumors of a letter being circulated, I think that is what they're trying to do. They're trying to circumvent that by saying, yes, this is the political leader, but these people have all signed to say, we support these people, so we have the numbers. Other than that, how is the president going to appoint a Prime Minister? I think that is where the problem lies. And when we were doing over Act number 40 of 1996, Mr. Robinson, in his wisdom, would have looked at, we would have looked at all those things and decided we didn't want that to be a situation that Tobago finds itself.
Okay.
And that's why I'm such a fierce defender of how Tobago autonomy is handled, because you don't want to have a situation where you erode some of the gains. Because in the case of Tobago, Tobago is a lot more advanced in leadership transition than Trinidad.
Okay.
And that is because Tobago does not have strictly a Westminster style administration. And let me explain that. The first thing first, we need to understand that a chief secretary is not elected at the polls. A prime minister is actually elected at the polls, based on the fact that the Constitution says, in the opinion of the president, the leader of the party that commands the majority support in the House shall be Prime Minister. In the Tobago House of Assembly case, the chief secretary is elected on the first day of this, which is the swearing in, the first session, after an election. So that is where members are sworn in and those appointments are made. And the chief secretary is elected by every elected member of the House on that day. So you can be the leader, and we saw it in Tobago, where Mr. Duke was the leader of the PDP, but Chief Secretary Fali Augustine was elected Chief Secretary. I mean, that might have been by consent, but it is very similar. It is very similar because the Prime Minister is saying, I want to go, but the only thing that is might be a little ticklish is because there's a division, it means that he did not get the consensus of all the members. He was espousing his views that this is who I want. And that is what makes this a little challenging. because this is an individual taking away the democratic right from the rest of the members and saying, I want you. What is ticklish about this is that the government have a 2-seat majority. And so it means that if 2 or 3 people decide that I don't agree with this, even if the president appoints this person, those 3 people or anybody can then file a motion of no confidence in the person elected as prime minister. The only danger of that, I think, that the people in that organization, the PNM, is afraid of, is that if you do that, the person remains prime minister for another 3 years, just like happened, and that person can dissolve the house and call an a snap election. And of course, once you did that, then you're out. You would not be selected. And I think a lot of people are afraid to lose their ministerial portfolios and stuff like that. In the case of the Tobago House of Assembly, that cannot be done. The chief secretary doesn't have the right to call an early election. The house can only be dissolved by a vote by the entire house. You have to have a sitting of a substantive motion, and the house can dissolve itself. And that is where the Tobago situation is a lot more advanced and a lot more democratic than that is happening in the parliament, where no individual in Tobago can get up and say, I've vexed with all you. Dissolving the house. We saw it in 2010, where a lot of ministers were mad with then Prime Minister Manning for dissolving the house because they thought that he affected them economically and all that. But in the case of the Tobago House of Assembly, the chief secretary doesn't have that power. The chief secretary will have to bring a motion to the house. The majority of members must support the motion, and that is the only way the house is dissolved. So in the case of Trinidad, where if there's a vote of no confidence and the prime minister have the 2 or 3 days to resign, prime minister can then dissolve the house before the 2 or 3 days because he's still prime minister, and then everybody's out in the cold. So I think that is one of the biggest fears that some of these ministers who might not agree has, that 1, the house is going to be dissolved, they will lose a couple months of pay, and 2, because they go against the party, or the leadership of the party, they would not be selected as candidates. And of course, it means that they can't go back to the House or maybe even the Senate.
And Mr. Jack, that situation is a very interesting one. One, because we are anticipating elections this year and probably next year for THE elections.
Between this year and next year for THE and this year for the central government.
Correct. And 2, the PNM has always been known as a party. They always have that image of unity and loyalty. And now that the public is seeing this sort of division where the transition of leadership is concerned, it's very telling. Because I'm not sure if you pay attention to the media and the trends in the media, it seems as though, as a citizen looking at it, it seems as though, okay, Mr. Stuart Young, he may have been the prime minister's pick, whoever MPs are loyal to the prime minister may rally around him. But when you listen to the public and, what the people are saying, a lot of people seem to be rallying around Miss Penelope Beckles. They assume that she should be the leader or the next prime minister. And Mr. Jack, in terms of politics and parties and people seeing this type of division, do you think that it will affect the way people will vote when elections come?
Well, maybe when people are aggrieved, people a lot of times people do what is in their best interest. But in terms of who becomes the prime minister, and everybody knew from day one that Stuart Young was the prime minister's boy. That he was a choice. And once you start seeing a couple things happening where Colin had stopped acting as prime minister in the absence of the prime minister, and Stuart was put to act, then you realize that it was a grooming situation taking place. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with you saying, I think this person has the ability, so I'm grooming them to be. But the final say well, it doesn't belong to you, right? And once the finance say it doesn't belong to you, then what you can do is make a suggestion. That being said, I don't want to spend my time discussing the internal workings of the organization. They go work that out. One way or the other, they will work that out. What I am concerned about is the effect that it has on the population. And that is, to me, that is it that this person is the most competent person in the government? And if that is the case, then you tell me the government hardly have any competent people, because he was Minister of National Security. We see what happened there. Ministry of Energy, we see what happened there. So it is not that this is a case of outstanding competence, but it might be a state of comfort. You know, when the salary stuff came up, and a lot of people asking me, you know, what is your view on this salary thing? And I laugh. They say, why you laughing? I say, the Prime Minister is about to go home. They say, but why would you say that? I said, the Prime Minister is about to go. I say, I bet you not my last dollar. Prime Minister is about to go. They say, why? I said, because the Prime Minister's salary is his pension. I said, if I am making $87,500 a month as pension, why would I want to be fighting up and work every day to make the same $87,500? That doesn't make any sense. And of course, there was a hefty back pay. And of course, the Prime Minister had been a member of Parliament for quite a while, unbroken, probably about 15, 20 years unbroken. And therefore he's entitled to his gratuity as everybody else is. And because of the length of time, it's going to be a couple $1 million well. So why would I fight up? And the Prime Minister is not young. Prime Minister is a 75-year-old man. Prime Minister deserve some me time, some family time, as he said. You know, but so as I saw it, I laughed. I said, this is thing. But I also want to say something else, you know, on that. The preparation for this transition, if you're a student of politics, you could have seen it more than a year and something ago. When there was a change in law, I think it's more than a year for sure, a couple of years ago, where there was a change in law that allows ministers and stuff, salaries to be hinged to the cost of living differential, where when there's an increase in salary for sitting ministers, there's an increase in pension for former ministers. That in itself would have said something to you that. But I also want to say this. It is not a situation that is untenable. And I like to be very fair. Mr. Charles have been lauded as a fantastic chief secretary and all that. But when Mr. Charles was chief secretary, the salary of a chief secretary, I think, was $11,000. So it means that Mr. Charles would have gone home with a pension of about $5,500.
Okay, understood.
You understand? So, and if you look at the number of ministers in Trinidad who would have served at a certain time when that kind of salary was a minister's salary and stuff like that, and they really can't live. There will be situations where people who are clerk, probably 2s and 3s, are making much more pension than they. But we also have to take into consideration there are former public officers who are suffering the same thing, where sometimes a senior citizen grant recipient is making more pension than some former public officers because of the time that they retired. You know, so it's a kind of chicken and egg situation. But it was obvious that was coming, and so anybody, any good student of politics should have been preparing for that. This was bound to happen.
All right, Mr. Jack, understood. And I just want to ask you, in terms of Dr. Rowley's strategy to resign before the elections, before the end of his tenure, what do you see that making a pathway for? Because when you listen to some students of politics, they are calling it is history. It's something that is that should be followed. It also quote unquote pressures the opposition leader, which is Ms. Kamala Persad. I think it's showing the public that while one older head is willing to give up the power, there's the next one who's clinging on to it. What are your thoughts on those?
I'm very careful with aging, with categorizing people by age for a reason. A lot of times we just say, well, a younger person take it. But it's a necessary level of exposure and experience and stuff. It's a country running, right? I think that the Prime Minister have an individual position where the Prime Minister said, I am going to resign. Obviously, when the Prime Minister first touted the issue of Stuart Young being his successor, there was upheaval within the PNM. Say, no, you can't pick our... And now you're seeing it playing out.
Yes.
But I think the reason the Prime Minister have held on to the position of political leader is that nobody could touch Stuart in the period, that, at least until September. So it gives them enough time to go to a poll and to see if Stuart could win at the polls. So it is not that it's groundbreaking. It is strategic on his part to get the person that he wants to be Prime Minister in. It's a simple strategic position. Yes, for the next couple of months, he would not get the Prime Minister pension because he'll still be a member of Parliament. And therefore, he will still be paid as a member of Parliament. But it's a couple of months. So why I can't wait out 2 months, 3 months, 5 months?
Understood.
But it is strategic. It is very strategic to say, this is who I want. And I am going to show you that this person can perform. And therefore, let me make the room. I'll be still there to groom, to guide, because there'll be a Prime Minister in name and then there'll be a Prime Minister in power. I am convinced that Mr. Oli will still be the Prime Minister in power. Once you're still in the Parliament, once you're still the leader of the party, of course, you will, the leader of the party is who sets the dictates as to where the government goes. Well, Mr. It is unusual. It is unusual that the Prime Minister will resign and stay in the Parliament. But as I said, you already have a small majority. If the Prime Minister resigns in order to make, from the Parliament, to make this constitutional change easy, well, then it means that they only have a one-seat majority. What does that mean? It means that no minister can fall sick or no member of Parliament can fall sick when a motion that called for a simple majority is being debated in the House. The opposition is going to hold it to ransom all the time. So it already have a small, minister have to travel and work and stuff like that. So you already have a small majority. So that, I think strategically, the Prime Minister knows that he cannot leave the Parliament. They're not ready immediately to do election, but all these points to an election will be sooner rather than later.
Mr. Jack, unfortunately, we are out of time this morning. You know, I always like to tell management when we're having conversations like these, I really wish we could get 2 hours, but you know, one can only wish. But Mr. Jack, I want to thank you so much for joining us here on Good Morning Tobago. The conversation was a very, very thought-provoking one. You know, as a young person, I love when I'm getting the knowledge, I'm hearing the difference in perspectives, because I can assure you the perspective you have and the perspective we have in the youth space is 2 different perspectives. So it's always good to hear that differentiating opinions. So, Mr. Jack, I want to thank you once again. Viewers, we have reached the end of...
Let me, before you wrap, if it's okay, let me just take the opportunity to wish the people of Tobago and in particular, and Trinidad and Tobago in general, and all the persons who are listening to us on the World Wide Web season, greetings for an extremely healthy, thought-provoking, and productive 2025.
Okay, nice. All right, Mr. Jackson, I want to join you. Thank you for joining us this morning. It was an excellent conversation. I look forward to more conversations like these. All right, viewers, thank you so much for joining us here on Good Morning Tobago. For those of you who are going to have fun this weekend, please be safe. We're going to see you all back here next week, Monday. And thank you once again for choosing Tobago Updates to start your morning on the right note. Take care.